Welcome to the Barcelona virtual meetup. Today we're going to speak about the blockchain governance, challenge or opportunity. It will be a virtual panel with Loudon Owen, Chair and CIO of DLT Lab, Shannon Hamilton, VP Sales North America, DLT Lab, Lisa Marks-Canty, President and Managing Partner of Nest Global Solution. The discussion will split in three main questions. The status of the blockchain governance before COVID-19, what we are going to face after COVID-19 in regard of blockchain governance. And of course, we will discuss about the fact that probably now we can also evaluate not only the challenging part of blockchain governance, but also the opportunity that will come. Quickly going through the agenda. I will introduce myself and contextualize the topic. I will ask the speakers to introduce themselves. I will go through the question that I've just listed, and at the end we will have time for Q&A question to the speakers. Brief introduction of myself. I'm the founder of Blockchain Mentoring Lab. We help organizations advising and consulting on blockchain projects, and we help them connect with partners, vendors, and talent within our network. I'm also mentor of the Hyperledger internship of last year and Barcelona Meetup community lead. We had the first impact of COVID-19 in the community was that usually we have a big meetup once a year when there is in Barcelona the Mobile World Congress, and it was the first big congress that was basically closed for the COVID-19 at the beginning of the March. And also myself, I was supposed to attend the celebration of the mentoring program in the annual Congress of Hyperledger in Phoenix, but I couldn't go because my flight was restricted because I was flying through Italy. Anyways, about my background, I have a master's degree in computer science, and I always worked in digital transformation. I started working in telecommunication and in a consulting company, where I believe it's a great gym in order to understand the complexity of the technical and business architecture. And then I have the possibility to work, to move and work in a multinational. And there I start building the digital transformation team. So when 3 years ago I moved to blockchain, the part of the challenges related to the integration of the technology in an enterprise context related to risk management, system integration, change management, IT, and business business governance were already quite familiar to me. So I now will contextualize a bit the topic of this meetup. I wanted to speak about blockchain governance and the impact that this economic slowdown will have in the current project that we are managing and the future project, blockchain project that will start in the future. Before COVID-19, I didn't really heard about discussion about the governance or also mentioning the fact that
the challenges of a blockchain project were related to the fact that, for example, our project quite long that can last also 36 months and that require a long-term investment from the companies. So in this context, the first reflection, of course, was how we can propose this technology in terms of new project to our client, and also we also arrived to the point that everyone was agree to the fact that the major challenge were on the business side rather than technology. The technology proved itself in terms of reliability, but that was missing the part of really working together and defining a common governance model that could sustain the microeconomy of the blockchain network. So if on one side we agree to the fact that governance was the main problem, and of course with this situation, the problems and the challenges that there were before will be even more difficult. On the other side, the reflection that I have done recently is the fact that there will be a lot of, or there are already a lot of businesses that cannot sustain anymore themselves by themselves, and that will start seeing the transformation as a potential option to consider in order to survive. So we have seen many initiatives funded by governments and private group of companies that start working together. So my first question is it possible that a tough situation like this in terms of economic crisis could trigger the transformation that before was not so taken in consideration because it implied choices that leaders were not ready to were not ready, and risk that leaders were not ready to take. And right now, since option A is not feasible anymore, it's possible that the second option related to the fact that probably there are more chances to survive or be relevant to the market long term if we work together. It's possible that this specific economic situation will boost a digital transformation that was more difficult before. So I will ask the speakers to introduce themselves briefly, and then I will split the conversation in 3 questions. Shannon, would you like to start?
Absolutely. Thanks, Laura. Hello, everyone. So my name is Shannon Hamilton. I lead North American sales for DLT Labs. My background is interesting in that I've been on the operations side where I've owned some of the business problems that I see blockchain being able to solve and innovative and emerging technologies addressing. And now I have the pleasure of being able to take that knowledge and understanding of the technology to large enterprises across North America. So I think your topics today are very relevant, Laura, and excited to chat about them with the team. I know Loudon was a sort of on again, off again member on the agenda, but maybe I'll just pass it over to him so we can get our introductions out of the way and then go to the other members of the group.
Thanks, Shannon. So I am on again. Loudon Owen, I'm the CEO of DLT Labs. I've been building and investing in software companies for quite some time. through a couple of recessions, actually. So fairly familiar with what I think will happen, but who knows? I do think the topic is interesting, and I think the splitting away the technical challenges from the governance challenges is very prudent. I also think that the technical challenges in full deployment are not insignificant. So at DLT, we've got about 225 people. We have what has to be the largest deployment of Hyperledger anywhere. We do 500,000 loads a year for Walmart Canada, together with all of their carriers, third-party carriers. So we're moving about $23 billion of goods. So we do know how to actually take it to market.
Hyperledger का वही open source community.
So we know how to take it to market, and I think it's interesting as to where governance fits and doesn't fit, but I'll weigh in at that point when we're discussing it. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. I don't see.
Hi, it's Lisa Marks-Canty. I am the president and managing partner of Nest Global Solutions, as well as the CEO of DocBlocks. I have been also both on the operations side as well as the technology side as a database application developer, as well as a DBA in the start of my career. And now focused in on digital transformation. I was the CEO of a company called Chain Ninja, where we quickly pivoted to creating a product which is under the name DocBlocks, which helps organizations move not only from analog to digital document management through DLT, but we really deconstructed the problem of master data management by creating a mission that helps organizations construct their own custom path from analog to digital through its cognitive digital transformation framework, which is really architected with independent components that perform at scale, that take a company through its, I would say, its maturity in the document, in the digital transformation journey, so they don't just leap into the distributed ledger or a blockchain. You start where the data ingestion begins, which is with extraction through automation, analytics, and then to blockchain. So, you know, myself, with my process engineering background, developed, again, the intersection of utilizing Lean Six Sigma processes, improvement processes, as mentioned, to realize the true potential in the master data management for the optimal applications of blockchain. You know, the goal during the pandemic right now around, you know, business continuity is really to help organizations to understand how they can work collectively in their ecosystem while maintaining their unique, you know, value add. So it's, you know, the global pandemic and the emergency has created a shift, and I know we'll go into it, but it's created a shift where that collaboration, governance, consortium models of sharing data, healthcare, pivots that we need to make as far as specific use cases to focus on a blockchain has been abundantly clear that we need to pivot to remain alive in business for ourselves. And so that's, you know, what we're focused in today.
Thanks a lot for your introduction. So as I said, we will go through, you already partially answered to this question. We will go through 3 specific questions. The first one is the challenge that we have faced so far before implementing and deploying the blockchain solution before COVID-19. Who wants to start?
So I guess I can start off, Laura, it's Lisa. So I think before the pandemic, the challenge around governance has still been, you know, over the last few years in traction that blockchain has made along various industries is the ideas of, you know, consortiums. And, you know, sometimes I find myself not using the words consortium and using collaboration better because it seems to go over better within the businesses. Anytime you mention blockchain consortium, they start to really turn off. So you talk about the collaboration and the fact that again, the crowdsourcing of data is so important on a global level to create different governance models in various industries is, it's a big challenge, and it was a challenge, and it still is a challenge. However, in the current position that we're in within healthcare, I would say, because this is a global pandemic, it's just abundantly clear now that we need to create the governance and these consortiums around the data sharing of healthcare information, as well as data around data, and focus on sectors that are experiencing this massive growth, like the supermarkets and supply chain logistics, and where are the masks, right? Where are the gowns that the hospitals are looking at? I mean, again, it's forcing people, the pandemic is forcing people to re-examine, right, those challenges that we had before.
Thanks a lot.
It's Loudon speaking. All very good points. I actually would reframe this somewhat, which is, I think the challenge before was we went through a series of cycles which are typical in the industry. And the cycle, first of all, is that you could fit everybody into a very small room that would understand anything about blockchain. Then it became, super popular, and everybody was talking about it, but nobody was doing it. And then, of course, you get that threshold of indignation where people get frustrated and they say it's a bunch of nonsense. So what happened is this has been one big theoretical discussion. And the discussions about governance, if you look at people, for example, Patrick's on the line from Beta. Hey, Patrick. That have actually been trying to pull together governance groups. We're talking 5-10-year cycles, and I don't think anybody should be mistaken about that. That's what happens when you're dealing with large enterprises trying to secure co-venturing and governance. And I don't know what happens, why, but how this happens, but sometimes even in emergencies, it simply gets delayed further. So what we have found, we kind of went down the path of trying to ensure that you take elements of blockchain. You don't look upon it as a all or nothing. You look upon it as a series of elements and components which can contribute to helping whatever the problem is. And I'm not talking about large, consumer deployment. I'm talking more about corporate to corporate. So on that side, we just said, look, what is blockchain? Blockchain is not one thing. It's a whole series of elements and benefits. It's part of a system, and that's how we got to where we got to. So I think the challenge before was huge, and it's proven by how little the technology is being used in industry today on a mission-critical basis. And I also think that the comments are excellent that, change is everybody's friend. Everything being the same and static is everybody's enemy because there is no reason to change. So yes, the catalyst right now is enormous, in particular healthcare and otherwise, and it crosses borders, it crosses every demographic you can imagine. So the question is how to enter, how to get a catalyst and something that will be an inflection point. And if I had to throw something out there, I think the blockchain, I'm trying not to jump ahead, but I think there's a solution, which is to start in organizations that are large enough to care, but able to move and have the capabilities. And that's probably universities and nonprofit institutions, which just have to be able to reduce their costs, increase their effectiveness and efficiency, and are very open to new technologies. When we're working with the largest company in the world by revenue. It's a giant. And, they have a very well-entrenched, complex, multi-dimensional operation as you can imagine. So, they're not going to change as quickly, and they're not going to, have the same attitude to governance as a series of universities would have. So it's not one size fits all. It's got to be carefully segmented, but the opportunity is very, very big right now.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Shannon, would you like to add to the conversation consideration about sales specifically?
Yeah, from a sales perspective, what I think is so important right now, and sort of the way that I've been trying to think about this, having been, I'll use the 2008 downturn as an example. Often you can't control the top line. You can't control the way that your customers are going to buy and how they're going to respond to challenges like this. So organizations are inwardly focused to look for those opportunities to re-engineer costs, streamline processes. And innovation during a time like this can be scary. And so, a conversation we had internally was, and blockchain, as a technology that people don't understand can be scary. So we've actually said internally, like, how can we be as boring as possible? How can we help ensure that people understand the tried, tested, and true, the transparency, the immutability, the auditability, the elements of blockchain that are so important to everybody. And many organizations are searching for these elements right now during the crisis. Really focus on what the technology enables more so than what the technology itself is, because if people can understand the benefits and understand how it's going to help them be more efficient internally, then I think we can ask them to have a bit of mind share right now to think about how they can embrace something like blockchain.
Yeah. And Shannon, I'm moving forward, so I give the possibility to the audience to ask a question at the end. Shannon have a little bit introduced the second question, what are the challenges related to governance after or in this specific time right now that we are living in the situation that is a little bit in limbo, no? It's not completely, we are not completely 100% conscious about what the impact of COVID-19 and the impact of the economic crisis. So we are in a middle stage, let's say.
Yeah, I like to say things are very fluid right now. That's been my new terminology for life these days. So I think it's really about, I liked, somebody had mentioned the word collaboration, and using collaboration as more the focus word versus governance. And really bringing groups of organizations or people together that really can start to appreciate, especially through this crisis, how we've had to unite in order to be able to survive. And whether it's knowing where the masks are, the gowns are, whether it's Walmart making sure that there's groceries on the shelves for all of the communities that they support. But I think collectively there's an awareness now of how much interdependency there is in the world and in all of our respective regions. And so how can we take technology that allows collaboration and organizations to be together on the same page to better the outcomes for the rest of the world. So for me, it's about collaboration and helping organizations understand how they can come together in a centralized way through technology such as blockchain and others for the betterment of the business outcomes they're trying to achieve.
So Shannon, you made a really good point there. It's Lisa. The one thing right now that we can say is after COVID-19 and after this pandemic, we can all anticipate that the world is going to be shifted in a different way. And we all collectively, whether you're working with blockchain technology or other technologies, all companies have to adapt to a new environment, right? I think I saw something the other day where it said the UN anticipates almost $1 trillion hit to the economy this year, right? So what does that mean? So digital transformation, the ability for us to make a difference with selling blockchain, you're going to get people that are now going to finally understand the applications of blockchain, right, from the data management side. But collectively, those that are focused with, utilizing a distributed ledger, or those that are selling any sort of technologies around blockchain, have to focus clearly on the sectors that are going to experience that massive growth, or the ones that are literally going to be, you know, on their sides, hurting because their business continuity plans had faltered because they didn't have a, you know, a strong enough digital strategy, right? Supply chain, logistics. We've spoken about healthcare numerous times, right? And I think that's the one thing with me, with the last few years with evangelizing blockchain technology, was truly getting people to understand exactly what blockchain is by applying, you know, what they already know, what business they're in. If I was talking to somebody within the banking sector or healthcare, you apply what makes sense on operational and a business sense to apply the technology to get them to understand, right? So we're going to have to solve real problems of the today, which will be, it sounds kind of corny, I guess, the today of tomorrow, right? In a few months, it's going to be a little bit different, right? And the problems that we're having today, we're focused on the masks and we're focused on the gowns, like we keep saying, right? In the hospitals. But again, there are problems that are going to, or that are going to come up that organizations were never faced with when we come out of this, because everybody has been so focused on those business continuity plans, right, and keeping those in motions, where digital transformation, and any of us out there saying, oh, let's talk about another sector that's not really experiencing the growth but has the downturn. How can you focus in on, say, the aviation sector? You think anything in aviation you're going to be able to sell any sort of digital transformation or blockchain products to, or what have you, or evangelize the technology? You're not going to be able to do that. So you have to sell services around your products using that business acumen. So you got to take the tech hat off and think from an operations level to solve problems that are going to be faster and more efficient.
You're music to my ears, because it's Loudon speaking. The problem is money.
Yeah.
The problem is capital. And these projects are great to talk about. When you have 70 organizations that are co-venturing at scale, 24/7 with IoT information integrated, and the massive infra that goes behind it, and a whole lot of configuration needed to be done, and all the various integration work, it's not theoretical anymore. So I have a very focused perspective, which is away from the theoretical and into deployment at scale. And that's what we're doing. And it's not inexpensive, and it's not easy. So, I think what has to happen, if the challenge in governance is actually money. So you need to have, if one organization is paying for it, guess what the governance model is going to be? And it's not going to be a pure blockchain. So you're going to have to decide, as individuals and as organizations, are you going down the path of seeking perfection and purity? There are fantastic models out there. I see some comments about building in incentives for people to hop on and join into whatever various groupings it is. They're fundamental. It's really vital. But at a corporate level, at an organizational level, where originally I think some of the early change will happen, it's going to be sequential. It's about capital, and you have to have an economic proposition that makes sense. And so, for example, in our organization, we don't talk about POCs. They're anathema to us because they're meaningless. And a POC, where you're not integrated with something at scale, has no utility and there's no credibility. In fact, if you look at the number of POCs that have failed, it's kind of like all of them. It's very, very unfortunate. So you have to be in a position to, first of all, work with organizations that understand a certain model and a certain governance. Now, the next sequence will be, of course, change. And that's the exciting part. And that's what I think we're really talking about, which is, in effect, having something where we're extremely driven and we can say, okay, nobody wants to be facing what we're facing. Obviously, there are some material problems in the way information is generated and shared, and it can be improved. But prove it at scale in mission critical environments where there are significant cost savings. I'm going to give everybody a piece of good news. The good news, it works. It actually works at scale and saves. I'm not allowed to tell you how much, but it saves enough money to fund a small country for a while. In single environments, and pretty material deployments. It is a phenomenally powerful technology, and that's where I think you lose it a little bit sometimes by getting caught up in the governance challenges. But I think for sure, somebody said before, it's a challenge and it's an opportunity. And we've got to simply get we've got to prove it works. We've got to do what, Jobs used to say, real artists ship, right? You've got to actually get it to market. You've got to ship it out the door and get it working at scale, prove the validity. And then the next phase will be people who see the capability and have the capital and the desire to bring it to market. The second that Bill Gates really jumps on this, he played around with the idea before, guess what's going to happen? I mean, you need one or two large committed organizations to tip it into the sphere where it becomes fundamental.
Thanks a lot. So let's move to the last question, and then I open the questions since I start seeing many of them already. Do you think so that in this specific point of time, the governance can be seen as opportunity rather than challenge, and that the specific situation can trigger something that before was more was not taken in consideration and was considered risky rather than right now?
So I think, Loudon just made a point as far as it only takes one large, organizations or, a few large organizations to be able to, to tip the scale. I think some of the challenges will be diminished. I think some of the opportunities, and again, reverting back to the current pandemic as far as, healthcare, and being able to truly understand the impact of, the importance of data sharing through, data-enabled healthcare, will be able to overcome some of the current governance challenges, and will be able to also have government participation. I think the U.S., some of the U.S. authorities had listed blockchain technology, among most of the critical infrastructure that's going to be needed to reduce the spread of the virus. And it was all over the media, and people will be able to finally separate the idea of crypto and blockchain by really understanding and leveraging the characteristics of the technology by the government utilizing these, actions and that they're doing in their fight against the pandemic. There's the World Health Organization is participating in certain projects. There's a project, I'm an advisor for Hasera, and there's a large initiative called Mipasa.org that is currently going on right now, which is going to bring, as I said, I think it's going to relieve some of the challenges that we've had in the past around governance.
Thanks a lot. Would you like Shannon to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to build on that because I think, we had the luxury of maybe time in previous governance models to, really think through and a little bit analysis paralysis on what the right standards would be or what the right use cases are. But I think this crisis has caused everyone to need to be more nimble and be more action oriented. So I liked, what Loudon had said about, really, I think pushing governance to look beyond POC would be my advice, and to see, what can be actually put into production. And I think the urgency and the crisis, given the scale of it and it's global in nature, is really going to push the governance structures to be more action oriented. I think they need to be.
Loudon, do you want to add some other comment?
Thank you, Laura. Yes, I think that there are two or three things about governance that may be controversial. One of them is I think it's an excuse for not getting projects up and running and working. And I think it's also a mistake when governance takes over substance. And I know it's in and of the same thing at the level of, hey, we want to change how things are done. We want them to be done better overall. But I think the way we've approached it, which all I can tell you is it's been successful, is to take the elements and the contribution that this technology provides. Thank goodness we're talking about the split between, the core underlying technologies and the sort of crypto universe, which will eventually come together, but not today, and try and prove something that works. Prove it, then you're going to find a lot more openness to the governance. But when you walk out and you're trying to say, hey, we'd like to have a universe where people can form to a good practice, a good, collaborative practice as follows, and here's what it's going to cost you. It's going to cost you in terms of security. It's going to cost you in terms of finances. It's going to cost you in terms of opportunity cost. It's not that easy. So I think unless you can say, yes, it works. Yes, it's got the degree of security and safety. We've looked at, one of the whole points. It's value. And until that happens, it's going to be hard. So let's put governance in context, which governance is in many cases going to be the outcome that everybody wants, I think, that everyone sees the benefit from, but it's not necessarily the catalyst. So a lot of groups start by saying, hey, let's set up the governance. And 2 years later, everybody's quibbling and the person's left the company and the group has, kind of moved in a different direction. And I think it can be very backwards. Same thing with standards, by the way. Standards can be tremendously powerful, but they're also barriers to entry. They've been used, as aggressive economic tools since they were invented. And guess what? It's, again, let's go to the other end of it, which is, I think, especially for entrepreneurial organizations, not necessarily what established companies who want to retain their customer base are doing. So it's more of a retention and slight, evolution stage. But for dynamic, and the people in the call, I just had a quick look, they're pretty dynamic people. And these are, new, inventive organizations, go after delivering value at any level. And then it's like a patchwork, a quilt that's going to come together quickly. And then when the benefits of the core technology are realized, then I think it's going to flow through to a much easier discussion concerning governance.
Okay, thank you. So I'm moving quickly to the question. So I start from the first one from Jacques. Jacques, if you would like, I'm going to unmute you. If you would like to directly ask the question. Jacques?
I'm sorry. I think I type my question on the screen. Can you read it?
Yes, sure. I think governance is both a challenge and opportunity. Before the pandemic, we were looking at the governance of the blockchain ecosystem.
Oh yes, I asked that questions because I am a developer, and here in the US we're looking at a way to set of standards, governance and standards between permission and permissionless networks. And we first try to look at it as one marketplace, but it turned out to be very difficult. So because permissionless and permission networks are very different. So we were kind of challenging the area. So I believe our approach was just that, okay, if you have a permission network which is private, and then all these stakeholders come together, so they need to really, we need really to make governance as a multi-stakeholder approach, so that everybody, agrees on what the network is going to look like. So that's what I was saying.
Yeah. So what I've seen in my context is that there is still the difficulty to start thinking about a minimum viable ecosystem and start agree between the restrict group of the partner of the the network rather than start working directly on the POC. That, as Loudon mentioned, if you start with the POC and you wait until the end to prove the viability of the ecosystem, many of them didn't have a lot of success. So I will move to the second question, Jacques. No, Carl?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. So there was some chat going on about incentives indexes, and one of the questions that I had here was, if you were to create an incentives index, where would you start, and at which level do you believe there is an opportunity to create the most impact? And then the last piece is, do those entrusted with governance really understand the landscape has shifted and have the ability to set a vision that establishes leadership while executing?
Wow, that's the two very good questions. Can I answer the second one first? I don't know. I mean, certain people do, certain people don't, and you focus, support, and drive those who do. And I think the one big difference here is everybody understands something's happened. I feel like I'm back in the 70s looking at all my friends with long hair, and it's a funny visual issue, but people can't get haircuts right now. So I think everybody's realizing at the most fundamental level that there are changes and that they're core and important. But you're going to see the spectrum of reactions in terms of leadership that you see across any spectrum. But what I can tell you is we work in the essential services area, so we're making sure it's mission critical that food gets on the shelves, as Shannon said, across Canada. Anything that's shipped across into or across Canada, it goes through our system today that ends up on the Walmart Canada shelves. And I can tell you one thing: at Walmart, they understand everything is shifted, and they've understood it for a long time, and are taking very direct action. Other organizations, political or private, a lot less so. So I think the thing to do is, how do you get people to understand the manifestation of that shift, what it really means? Again, I've got a very simple thesis. You show them the value. And, for example, there was a good sort of question from Jacques, because it's integrated with that, which is, the demonstration of change is, I'll tell you it in one minute, which is we went to big trucking companies and others, and we said, okay, it's time to shift over the system. The answers were not things that I could put on prints, and I wouldn't say them publicly for the first 5 minutes. And then we said, you're going to get paid faster. You're going to have certainty. You're going to cut down on disputes. We can prove to you in 5 minutes how it works. And then they're our best friends. And that transition point was phenomenal as you moved from, the theory of change into the application of change. I'm finding that when you start at the major, this is a huge change. It's really difficult. This is going to change your life. We're the only people who know how to do it. That's when everybody shuts the door. And that's why, we're trying to be boring. We're trying to be, well, it's an extension of what you do. Well, you've already been doing it. You can just do it a bit better. Well, don't change your current systems. We'll integrate with you. So that's kind of the way I look at it. As to the first question, building in incentives, at an industrial level, the incentive is people will save money and they'll make money. And that's it. And until you can quantify that and quantify it, hopefully at scale, and you have, because everyone asks, the people that ask the easy questions when you're looking to get this out to market never do anything. So it's only when they start asking the hard questions up front. What's it going to cost? What are my risks? What happens over here? Will it pass a security audit, et cetera, et cetera? Those are the groups that are actually worth working with. And those are the groups that are going to do something exciting and give you a chance to showcase the benefits.
Thank you, Loudon.
There is another question from Vikas. Vikas is still the call. Otherwise, all the other one in the thread I'm seeing that are from Jacques, Jim, Is
There's
there?
also Carl. There's Carl in the thread as well.
Yeah. Carl.
And maybe there's questions from those that haven't chatted them in. So if we're open to ad-libbing questions, that's a possibility too.
Can I make everybody an offer? Here's my offer. If you want to find out how to convince people to work, and let's call it generically in the field of blockchain or utilization of blockchain, which I think is a shorthand. But anyway, it's a shorthand for an aggregation of technologies, approaches, theories, philosophies, ways of doing things. You know, get in touch with us and we will see what we can share with you in terms of credible, substantive benefits. Because you walk in a company, and if you can save them tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars in this environment or any environment, they are going to listen to you. If it's going to be complicated and risky, and it's going to be confusing, and they're going to get all hung up, you know, day one. So instead of talking about governance, if you can talk about saving them a ton of money or making them a ton of money, you will get at least a hearing. If you're talking about governance, you will be thrown out very quickly, or you're going to be sequestered into a group of people where they're trying to give them a job to keep them busy, but they're never going to do it. They won't have any credibility organizationally. The exciting companies that we like to work with are the emerging companies, the young ones that are really dynamic, and they're not hampered by, you know, a lot of the institutional biases that are there. And that's, you know, it's really fun. The money, today at least, probably not in 3 years, is going to be with the giants and the organizations that are at a certain scale where they can actually afford to go full sort of digital, as what Nest and DocBlocks are talking about doing, and they can actually understand why change is so vital. But, you know, I think it's different people have different requirements. And I think Jacques hit it on the head, which is it's not a single technology. It's not going out permissionless and going out on a permission basis, or different worlds, different universes. But I'll tell you one thing, guys. Tell me if I'm wrong. Can somebody tell me if I'm wrong, please? Has anybody seen something in the big corporate sphere that's permissionless, that's integrated with their existing data and systems at scale?
No.
We haven't seen it. No.
Because you're not going to. You're not going to. You're not going to pass security audits. We've done 9 security audits at Walmart, and we've worked with Walmart all over the world doing this. No one's going to pass a security audit today. So when you're actually looking, and my goal in life is to make sure people are busy and actually driving forward instead of at the theoretical stage. So obviously I infuriated a lot of professors at university, but you know, the key here in terms of actually being able to make a living doing this and getting the benefits is to be able to get out fast. The world today is not about permissionless with large organizations. It is, of course, in that whole period of time where you could raise money just by doing a white paper, but that's largely gone, and it's not coming back anytime soon. So I think there has to be a shift, not only at the leadership stage, but at the, you know, at the stage of everybody in these organizations, because we've gone through that stage. The excitement that you could wave around a business card with blockchain on it and people throw money at you, that's gone. So it's how you approach, how you demonstrate you can deliver the value, and the value today is in helping organizations that can afford it save money, make money. But we're happy to share with you, you know, as best, if people want to get a hold of us, you know, how to put something concrete around what the benefits are. And hopefully that'll help.
And Loudon, I think to add on to that just real quick, but it's going to be different between the mid-market, larger organizations, right? It's not a one-size-fits-all, and I think that was your point, and that was the point I was trying to make before, which everyone's going to have a different motivation, a different incentive to be able to either make money, right, or initially save money, right, to make money.
Yep.
And it's creating that plan and that incentive for them, right?
Yeah, I make it really simple. I just say, if I can't make you 10 times what you're paying us back per year, don't pay us. And so I found a way of sort of cutting through it, but you're absolutely right. You know, a mid-tier organization that's on its way up might be a lot easier to get to than a large organization that's hovering and trying to be protective. That's why we like the young entrepreneurs, but they usually can't afford to work with us because, you know, we're doing turnkey. So the other thing that happens is when you walk in to speak to somebody, is it turnkey? Who's going to do managed services? Who's going to do the onboarding? How much integration is there? What do you have to integrate with? How many partners? How sophisticated are the partners? And as you go down that path, you know, it skews today at least. And as the different stages in deployment get more and more standardized, it'll be easier. But today, we have to be capable of doing the one-stop shopping and the turnkey. On the other hand, what we're looking for, by the way, and I'm sure others are as well, is partners. We're looking for partners who can help us take it to the next level because we can't be everywhere at once. And I'm sure everyone feels the same way. So you have to be able to offer for whatever the size of the organization, whatever the segment is, and whatever they're looking for, it's got to be sufficiently turnkey. Otherwise, they won't do it. They'll talk about it. They'll do something small, but they won't actually spend the money and the time.
Thank you. I think that we don't have any other question, and we are arrived at the end of our availability in terms of time for the room. So I want to thank you, everyone, to be able to join this call. It was really interesting, and it's been recorded, so we will upload it on the Hyperledger YouTube channel, and I think inside the Hyperledger share Google Drive.
And Laura, we have to thank you for your hard work. You did a spectacular job. And, you know, often people don't thank the people organizing it. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Laura.
you for joining.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Laura.
Bye.
Be safe. Take care, everyone.
Take care, everyone. Be safe.
Yeah.